Hello sir, good morning. This is my report. The political philosopher that was assigned to me was Friedrich Nietzsche. So who is Friedrich Nietzsche? So Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche was born on October 15, 1844 in Germany. He was the son of Karl Ludwig and Franziska Nietzsche. He is a German classical scholar, philosopher, a critic of culture, and a major influence in the existentialism movement. He is an ardent foe of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and power politics. So Nietzsche, he was one of the most famous and controversial philosophers in history. He calls himself the philosopher of the hammer, as he desired to shatter many of the most treasured views of Western philosophy. So Nietzsche, as a student, he did exceptionally well at school that he became a professor at the University of Basel even when he's just in his mid-20s. But sad to say, his official career didn't work out. He got fed up, he gave up his job and moved to Sils Maria and in the Swiss Alps, and there he started working his masterpieces, and among those are The Birth of Tragedy, Human All Too Human, The Gay Signs, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, and On the Genealogy of Morals. So his first book, The Birth of Tragedy, it was his first published book in 1872. The book questions the dominant 18th and early 19th century portrait of Greek culture, which was in Johann Winckelmann's book entitled History of Ancient Art in 1764. So in this book, Winckelmann portrayed ancient Greece as rational, noble, and serene, but Nietzsche in his Birth of Tragedy, by contrast, defines ancient Greek culture by the opposition between Apollonian dream and Dionysian intoxication. So it was said pa nga na this work of him is speculative rather than exegetical, kasi nga it argued na Greek tragedy daw arose out of the fusion of what he termed yung dalawang elements, the Apollonian and Dionysian. So the former, it represents measure, restraint, and harmony. And the latter naman, it represents unbridled passion, in that Socratic rationalism and optimism spelled the death of Greek tragedy. So his next book, Human All Too Human, this book of him is often considered, it is considered a start of his mature period. And the following year, Human All Too Human was supplemented with a second part entitled Mixed Opinions and Maxims, which was later on followed by its third part entitled The Wanderer and His Shadow. So Nietzsche composed these works as a series of several hundreds of short passages and aphorisms. So when we say aphorism, it is the concise statement of a principle. So this book of him, Human All Too Human, it is a series of his concise condensations of his assorted insights. He reflects upon a subject's to rigorous critic myriad cultural, political, and psychological phenomena, and theological and metaphysical opinions, where the idea of power appears as an explanatory principle. But during this stage, he emphasizes hedonistic considerations in explaining cultural and psychological work, which appears to some readers as an uncharacteristic work inspired by a positivist science, kasi given his harsh criticisms of these ideologies, the hedonism and utilitarianism, in his other works, talagang iba yung magiging dating. So next book is The Gay Signs. So this book of him, it reveals both Nietzsche's playfulness and his embrace of life. That's why he called this his most personal among his books. It was here that he first proclaimed that God is dead, as to which a large part of the book is devoted, in his doctrine of eternal recurrence. So eternal recurrence, it means to draw away from any thought, to transcend, because it introduces us to the possibility of any final escape from the present world. This doctrine, it attends to how people of different levels of health are likely to react to the prospect of being reborn over and over again, to replay life's experiences exactly as before in every pleasurable and painful sequence of details. Kaya nga, this doctrine, tinawag siya na doctrine only for the healthiest who can love life in its entirety. Next is Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Thus Spoke Zarathustra, kung ang gay science was his most personal, ang Thus Spoke Zarathustra naman is one of his most famous works, and he regarded it as his most significant. Why? Kasi it is a manifesto of personal overcoming. It is a guidebook for others towards the same revitalizing end. Thus Spoke Zarathustra was an opposite of the Judeo-Christian worldview. He filled this work with nature metaphors, almost in the spirit of pre-Socratic naturalist philosophy, which invoked animals, earth, air, fire, water, celestial bodies, etc. And all of this in the service of describing the spiritual development of Zarathustra. So Zarathustra, he is a Persian prophet who spends his time in solitude in the mountains for 10 years and grows weary of his wisdom, beginning his downgoing to humanity to teach them what he has learned. So according to Nietzsche, Zarathustra envisions a mode of psychologically healthier being beyond the common human condition, and he refers to this higher mode of being as the superhuman or the overman or the Ubermensch, which later on itatakal natin. So next is Beyond Good and Evil. So Beyond Good and Evil, it is commonly viewed as a book written by a philosopher for the philosophers. Why? Kasi he accuses past philosophers of lacking critical sense and that they are blindly accepting dogmatic premises in their consideration of morality. Specifically, he accuses them of founding ground metaphysical systems upon the faith that the good man is the opposite of the evil man. Here exposes the deficiencies of those usually called philosophers and identifies the qualities of a genuine philosopher, which are the imagination, self-assertion, danger, originality, and the creation of values. So according to him, these qualities are the qualities of a real philosopher. So Nietzsche, he alternatively philosophizes from the perspective of life located beyond good and evil. He views things from the perspective of life kasi according to him, all knowledge is perspectival and belongs to a specific perspective. So his next work, his last work, entitled On the Genealogy of Morals, it is a polemic or attack against the assumptions and methods, characteristics of works like Paul Ries's book entitled The Origin of Moral Sensations, which was inspired by utilitarianism and Darwinism, where he offers a naturalistic account of our moral values, especially altruism. But in the genealogy, Nietzsche offers a competing account of the origin of moral values, aiming to reveal their life-negating foundations and functions. The book, it is composed of essays that advances the critiques of morality and religion expressed in Beyond Good and Evil, and there are 3 essays of this book actually. And the first essay, it discusses master morality versus slavish morality, which later on we discuss natin. So ethics. Nietzsche declared himself to be the world's first immoralist. He said na ethics as a system that exists today is harmful to the society because it allowed the weak to rule the strong. Nietzsche, he was against any sort of morality for all, meaning equality for all, because he thought na it was harmful and it holds back extraordinary people. So master morality and slave morality. So Nietzsche said na a shift took place back in ancient history, probably after the Greeks, where what was considered good and bad shifted. He said, in the original system of good and bad, when it was master morality, things that were good were things like being wealthy, strong, healthy, and having power. So these are the good traits which was also possessed by the Greek heroes during that time. And the bad traits naman are those what the slaves had who were under the masters. The poor, weak, sick, and pathetic. So they basically correspond to the phrase, wealth is good, poor is bad. So Nietzsche felt that slave morality at some point had a revolt, and what it was able to do was that it was able to turn positive traits like being wealthy into a negative, like calling it greed, because people couldn't accept that another person had more than them. And slave morality changed the definition of good into charity, spiritual, moderation, humbleness, passive, and evil naman is cruel, selfish, wealthy, and aggressive. So Nietzsche, he felt that the slaves criticized what they wanted but could never have, and they began praising what they did not want but they happened to have. That's why he said na there is a shift took place between master and slave morality. The doctrine of equality, there exists no more poisonous poison, for it seems to be preached by justice itself, for it is the end of justice, is one of his life-changing quotes. Kasi si Nietzsche, he was never a fan of equality for all. He thought some people potentially could strive and more move forward in society. Trying to hold them back was wrong. Will to power. Nietzsche's concept of will to power goes in response to Schopenhauer's will to live. So will to live was that our desire that pushes us of life is to procreate, is to make good offspring. Yun yung concept ng will to live ni Schopenhauer, but Nietzsche said no. He said that the struggle to survive, which Schopenhauer talked about, is secondary, and the most important thing is to expand one's power. He set as an example now are the people and animals who risk their own lives through warfare and struggle in order to increase their own power. So nihilism. Nietzsche was one of the people who introduced nihilism, and he said now that the belief in God is not strong. That belief kept people in line and gave people meaning in life. And he said that now that the belief isn't that strong, we are entering an age of nihilism, which basically means nothing less, nothing matters. So Nietzsche thought that nihilism that says nothing has any importance of life has no purpose, and he thought that it was one of the biggest crises in the history of man. Whether man recounts from it, whether he becomes master, is a question of his strength. He's not saying na nihilism was good, but rather he was saying that's where we're headed for when religion's ethics and morality goes away. So revaluation of values. So Nietzsche said that we need to reevaluate all of our values, to examine all of the wrongs, all of the ways we are used to thinking, to see what's right and to see what's wrong. So one of the most controversial thing he ever said was the phrase, God is dead. So this praise of him was not meant literally kasi he doesn't believe in God, but rather he meant na in terms of power that God's laws had over people was now gone. People use rationalism, meaning they think for themselves and they use science. The whole idea of evolution, so that religion's power was gone. It's not saying na God is dead, but rather the power of religion is no longer a force on people's lives. Next is Nietzsche's most famous concept, the Übermensch, or the Superman, or the Overman. So Nietzsche felt that it is the only thing that could And nihilism again is the nothingness. Everybody's going to be all, there's no purpose in life. And he felt that there will come this Superman who will live life by his own values. He's confident, he's not held back by society. And he said that Superman is someone who elevates himself over others in order to go beyond the limits of established morality and social norms, in attempt to decide for themselves about good and evil without listening to the complaints of the herd. So Nietzsche compared the superhuman with what he called the herd. So the herd is everybody else. All of the masses, most of us, we all act alike and think alike. He said that the herd has no ambition. They have no real commitment. They can't dream for themselves. They don't go after what they want. All they want to do is do the safe life that everybody else does. It's actually okay to do that, but Nietzsche, for him, he felt that this Superman or the Ubermensch could go beyond the herd. He felt that the herd mentality limits possibilities that someone could have in life. The herd prevents people from creating new ways of thinking and acting. He said that the Superman would create new values and not just follow the herd. He will not follow the morality of common people, everybody else who only just wants to be average and mediocre. He felt that the Superman would go above the accepted norms and ethics of the herd, and he will decide for himself what is good and what is bad. So that's the concept of Nietzsche's Ubermensch.